that's all Ducks Twitter, Ducks on Reddit, Facebook, everywhere. That's all everybody's talking about for good reason, because he's just been that good, and he should be in the discussion. He's been just as good, if not better, than Rinne in some cases, and this is just another showing. We're going to say it multiple times when we review the third period, after, and so on next game from now. It's really going to be all good John Gibson if the Ducks are going to get into the playoffs.
No, it's true, and he would make one more highlight reel save. This one on Tyler Myers, who we have not seen make this kind of move since he's come from Buffalo, right? You don't see him making these types of plays with Winnipeg, but he walks around Derek Grant, no problem off the blue line. Tyler Myers is a big man. I don't know how you miss him making that play. No. Throws a nice backhand shot right dead center in the slot. Gibby has to come up with, again, another glove save on this one before the period would close out.
Yeah, he's not a guy you normally would put in anywhere you'd see him walking around anyone, because, he's 6'8". He doesn't really walk around anybody. He kind of just lanks around. So, it was a great save by Gibby, but I feel like, getting a little bit off topic, but Myers is kind of like that underrated big guy, because we always hear about Chara, and we always talk about how he's 6'9", and he's just massive. But Myers is an inch shorter than him, and I don't think we ever hear about it. But I just thought it was interesting.
I wonder if it's like a numbers thing, right? I don't know if Tyler Myers has the same sort of career numbers that Chara has. You have to go look at his stat line. He's got 34 points this season. We'll see. Now we've brought it up, we might as well look at it.
Yeah. I just feel like, as we always talk about Chara being the big guy, and Myers is he's a massive guy, and he hasn't really got much recognition since he came over from Buffalo. So I thought it was interesting, because I would never want to go up against him, and I think the broadcast was saying it was Myers and Bufflin out at one time, and you've got a guy who's 6'8", 220, and a guy who's 6'5", 265 in Bufflin. That's a scary duo to go in front. If you're crashing that or anywhere close to that, I don't want to be up against those two guys ever.
No, Bufflin is a monster. We've seen that guy just throw people to the ice. No problem at all. He's able to grab two guys at the same time and chuck them. That guy's a scary man. Tyler Myers, just to kind of close the books on him here, his highest producing season point-wise was his first year in the NHL. He had 11 goals, 37 assists, 48 points. He's never hit 40 points since then. Yeah, in fact, he's only had over 30 points 2 times, and that's one of them this season.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I feel like he's had injuries at some point where he's kind of trailed off a bit, if I remember correctly. But there was a lot of hype around him in his first season with Buffalo, and then, of course, all the things that ended up leading to him getting traded out of Buffalo to Winnipeg. I feel like he's just getting back to that point. I don't want to stick on this too long, because I don't think any of you guys want to hear us talk about Tyler Myers for 20 minutes.
No.
I just wanted to bring it up because I'd forgotten going into this game that he was 6'8" until it was brought up, because you just don't really hear about it that much as you hear about Chara being the massive guy around the league.
No, that's 100% true. Going into the third period, the game is 2-1. Jets have the shot advantage in that period, 16-6 and 33-10 overall. It's a miracle the Ducks are even in this game, as we've said multiple times. Kyle Connor, a guy who has been making noise this season for sure, just is having an unreal game. He has just been all over the ice in this game. Gibby had to make another grade A chance on him, make a save rather on the grade A chance. I don't know how Connor was only just given 1 goal this game. He had 5 shots.
Yeah.
He tied Patrick Laine for shots on goal this game on the Winnipeg Jets. How do you feel about Kyle Connor? I know you like him, but did you know he was going to come up and do this kind of damage once he got to the NHL?
I remember when he got drafted, and there's a lot of buzz that they got a steal taking him where they did. I think it was 17th or something, and they took him after a lot of guys that went off the board that he probably should have went before. Was having a great season with Michigan and NCAA, and he just continued from there, and now he's finally solidified his spot on this team after ripping up the AHL the last few seasons. And lately, he's just been unbelievable. He's got 6 goals in his last 5 games. Had both in the winner in overtime against LA the other night. This kid's just going to score goals. He's got 28 now. He's one, or I think it'd be 28 or 27. He's one behind Brock Besser, who obviously has been out for a considerable amount of time. But this kid is unbelievable. And the Winnipeg Jets just continue to find guys. Like I said at the beginning of the show, this top 6 that they have now, you look at it a couple years ago, it was nowhere close to this. You've added Line, you've added Kyle Connor. Scheifele stepped up into being an elite player. All of a sudden, Blake Wheeler's one of the top playmakers in the National Hockey League. It's kind of turned out to be an unbelievable, one of the most deadly top six in the National Hockey League. It's just scary, and I like Kyle Connor. He's a guy who's kind of underrated, has come up, is now making a name for himself. Nobody's going to beat Barzal out of the Calder, but I think he's a guy who should definitely get some second or third place votes.
I'd agree with that, man. He was very, very noticeable tonight. I wrote here, the Ducks just keep getting steamrolled, can't get out of their own zone. There was 16 minutes to go in this game, and the shot advantage was 35-11. It means the Ducks had one shot in the first 4 minutes. I feel like they needed more pressure in this game at some point. I know that they couldn't find a way to generate it, and that was a huge issue in this game. For whatever reason, they weren't able to. I guess they were talking about coming out and hitting this Jets team, and that's why the Jets were doing so well against them. They need to put bodies on these players. It's pretty tough to do when your team is considerably slower than the Winnipeg Jets. That's an issue that Anaheim has faced several times this season against the likes of Nashville or the likes of Vegas, or now looking at the Winnipeg Jets team. That's not a great thing for your team to be showing, is that we're at the end of the year, this is playoff mode, and you can't skate with the teams that are at the top of the league. That's not a good sign going into the playoffs, or trying to make the playoffs, rather. And that's how this would go. I mean, if not for Gibby, again, as we've been talking about, just holding down the fort, as he has been all season, this would easily be an 8-2 game. But the Ducks would get a break in this third period. Nick Ritchie, a guy that we've talked about a lot recently, about how we feel like he's needs to step up and make something happen. Well, in this one, he does. Blocks a shot. He's off on a 2-on-1. Elects to shoot. Hellebuck looked like he had the puck. He catches it. I don't know if it got his top of his pads or like his chest area, but it rolls down as he drops, squeaks between the 5-hole and goes in the net, just trickled through his legs. That was great, because we needed Nick Ritchie to step up and score, and he finally does, tying the game in the third period.
I mean, Hellebuck fell asleep on that play, right? I mean, he had faced nothing up until that point. He almost let in the one against Cogliano that you said he'd fallen asleep in. I mean, at this point, the shots were just so lopsided that I feel like he had seen no action in the longest, probably about 10, 15 minutes. He had seen really no quality scoring chances. And Ritchie just squeaks this one through. I tried to put it out on Twitter during the game, and I misspelled Hellebuck about 50 times before I just gave up and just randomly spewed some letters out there and hoped that I got close. But yeah, I mean, it was a sloppy play. I mean, we've had him, when we were talking to Paul Campbell, in our discussion up there for a guy who should be considered for the Vezina. Him, Bobrovsky, Rene, Vasilevsky, Gibson, they're all the guys in that discussion. He didn't have to be great in this game. Wasn't really that great, but when the Ducks are getting like 2 or 3 scoring chances in the game, I mean, what are you supposed to do? I mean, at some point you're just going to get bored back there, and he really looked like that on this goal.
No, he did. The Ducks had 3 shots on goal after that Nick Ritchie goal. They were just about 10 minutes into the third period. The rest of the way, it was all John Gibson. I mean, just Gibson, save after save after save. Who was the breakaway he saved on in the third period? Do you remember who that was towards the end?
Oh, man. I might have put
I have to
it
go
out.
Back and look.
I feel like I put it out
who had
there.
that break.
Was
it Kyle Connor?
I wouldn't be surprised. It was after the Ritchie goal, right?
Yeah, after the Ritchie goal, Gibby had to make another breakaway save. Keeps the Ducks in it, forcing this game into overtime, single-handedly carrying this team on his back, as we've said, this whole post-game show. All John Gibson, all Vezina. That's what we're talking about here in Anaheim, is we want him to get some recognition. He absolutely deserves it. Into regulation, we got a 2-2 score going to OT. I was very happy with this boring performance by our Ducks to even get a point, to somehow squeak in to overtime here, to keep pace with the rest of the Pacific Division. John Gibson just held this down. And going into overtime, I could kind of feel like it was going to be the Jets game, just because they dominated this so much. And I felt like they only needed one chance. And unfortunately, that's all they really got in overtime. The Ducks, with a few chances, And all it would take was one shot on goal, and it would be none other than the guy who dominated this game. Kyle Connor strikes on a 2-on-1 break with Mark Scheifele. Did you feel like Fowler overplays this on the strong side and Scheifele thread the needle over to Connor? Yeah. And he was able to cash in? I felt like Fowler didn't need to go to the strong side, leave the weak side open, and then all of a sudden Connor's in alone.
They moved away from what they were doing well up until that point in overtime, where they weren't really pressing the play. They were sitting back, exiting the zone if they had to, and then Fowler gets, I think, a little bit too aggressive, overcommits, and obviously ends up making a mistake that leads to essentially a 3-on-1 the other way. Kyle Connor goes in on a breakaway, and I unless Gibby was going to make another amazing save, I think Kyle Connor was due in this game for a goal. And, of course, he makes it pay. But, again, on a normal game, if the Ducks had played a good game, I would have been a little bit more disappointed that they could have got 2 points out of this one. But the fact that it was so lopsided, and it was amazing that they're able to even get 1 point. Like, if you had told me at the beginning of the game that without Getzlaf and the Ducks were outshot, 41-17 or something close to that they were able to get a point against the Jets, I would have been happy. I would have taken it no matter what, even though it sucks to lose in overtime. You look at tonight, I mean, Dallas lost. They were up 2-0. They blew a 2-0 lead, lost in regulation. Big points for the Ducks to pick up a point on them, and they're sitting in the first wildcard spot right now. So it's a huge point, and we're happy, I think, going into this show, the fact that the Ducks are able to pick up a point against Winnipeg.
No, that's true. Pulling positives out of the game that was all negative. I appreciate that, because you don't want to dwell on the fact they lost this game, because we expected the loss, and the fact they got a point is great news. But that Brandon Montour and Cam Fowler, yes, they played tough minutes. And yes, they played against the Jets' top players. So it's expected you're going to get burned a couple of times. And that's exactly what happened. Montour and Fowler got burned on the second goal, and then they got burned again on this, or Fowler rather got burned on this overtime goal.
Yeah.
I see what Fowler was thinking there. If he's able to intercept that play, then it's a break the other way, a 3-on-1. So you make a risk. He's an offensive-minded player. You take a risk, rather than make a risk. You take a risk, and you try to move that puck forward to get your team that chance. And it didn't happen for him this game. He's been great. I don't want to pick on him too much. And this is just a team that's in another world right now. In the Jets, they're just playing at that next level. The Ducks are just hoping they can even scratch at the surface of to get a point out of it. It's a loss. Now let's move on. Let's get to our post game. We got to talk about a couple of things. I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about the update to Terry and his ability, maybe Troy Terry coming to Anaheim. There was some news put out by Corey Pronman. What is going on with our prospect, Eddie?
Yeah, so there was I think it was an article that Corey Pronman put out on The Athletic where he had mentioned, somebody had asked him about Henrik Borgstrom, Troy Terry, and Dylan Gambrell out of Denver, to see if they were going to sign, if there's any updates on them, because they all have teams that they would be looking to sign for. Henrik Borgstrom, obviously a prospect of Florida and a highly touted prospect, so he said that they're all signing once Denver is done. Now, not necessarily said they're all signing with the teams that have their rights, but you would assume that's what he meant, which I guess is a good sign. I mean, we would hope that he ends up signing with Anaheim. We all have bad memories of Justin Schultz and him ditching Anaheim and heading over to Edmonton, so I think that's what a lot of people are wary about, because nobody wants to lose Troy Terry because he has a lot of upside. Denver currently is in the NCAA tournament. Their games are basically, if you lose, you're out, you win, you go on. So he's essentially, he could be one game away from being able to sign and come to Anaheim, or he could be a couple games away depending on how well his team does. Denver is supposed to go a long way, so we'll have to wait and see. But I think it's good news to finally hear something that it looks like he will sign with the Ducks when he's done. And maybe we actually see him play. I mean, the most recent guy is Ryan Donato in Boston. After his NCAA season was over, he signs a contract, plays I think the next day, and he had 4 points in his first 2 games with the Bruins. Didn't pick up a point tonight, but you can't complain when you've got that kind of production coming from a guy you probably didn't expect to be in your lineup.
No, that's true. So that would just segue directly into my next comment to you. Troy Terry, the opportunity to come to Anaheim, as you and I kind of said prior to this, we didn't think so. At least I know I didn't think he'd be seen up here just because that top 9 is so solidified. But with this stagnant offense continuing for Anaheim, do you feel like the spotlight was on this team with